The salvage ship Persistence drifted silently through the graveyard of the Zephyrian fleet, its hull scarred from countless expeditions into dangerous space. Captain Elena Rodriguez guided her small crew through the twisted metal remains of what had once been the galaxy's most feared armada. 300 years had passed since the Great Silence, when every Zephyrian ship had suddenly stopped transmitting and disappeared from known space. "Captain, I'm reading something massive on the long-range sensors," called out Jin, the ship's scanner operator. His young face was pale as he studied the readings. "It's not showing up as debris. The energy signature is alive." Elena moved to his station, her weathered hands gripping the back of his chair. At 45, she had spent more years in the void than most people spent on planets. Her dark hair was streaked with premature gray, and her brown eyes held the careful wisdom of someone who had survived where others hadn't. "How massive?" "Roughly the size of a dreadnought, but the shape is all wrong." "It's organic, Captain, and it's moving." The other two crew members, Marcus and Zara, exchanged worried glances. Marcus, the engineer, was a tall man with steady hands and a nervous disposition. Zara, their pilot, was barely 25 but could fly anything with engines. All of them had heard the stories about what lurked in Zephyrian space. "Pull up the visual," Elena ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing a creature that defied easy description. It was roughly dog-shaped but the size of a warship, with 6 powerful legs ending in claws that could tear through steel. Its hide was a deep blue-black that seemed to absorb light, covered in bony plates that looked like natural armor. Most terrifying were its eyes, burning orange orbs the size of escape pods that seemed to look directly through the screen at them. "Sweet mercy," Marcus whispered. "That's a Fenrir-class war beast. I thought they were just legends." Elena had heard the stories too. The Zephyrians had supposedly created these creatures as living weapons, each one capable of tearing apart entire fleets. They were said to be intelligent, nearly indestructible, and completely loyal to their masters. When the Zephyrians vanished, the war beasts had supposedly died with them. "Captain, it's turning toward us," Zara reported, her voice tight with fear. "Should I power up the engines?" Before Elena could answer, their communications array crackled to life. A deep, rumbling voice filled the bridge, speaking in perfect galactic standard. "Unknown vessel, you trespass in the domain of the dead. State your purpose or be destroyed." The crew stared at each other in shock. War beasts weren't supposed to be able to speak, let alone in their language. Elena stepped forward, activating the communication system. "This is Captain Elena Rodriguez of the salvage vessel Persistence. We're here on a legal salvage operation. We mean no harm." Silence stretched for long moments. Then the voice returned, somehow carrying notes of surprise. "Human. It has been 317 years since I have heard a human voice. You know our species? I know many things human. Your kind fought alongside my creators against the void spawn. You showed honor in battle." The massive creature on the screen seemed to tilt its head, studying them. "But you are few now. The galaxy believes you extinct." Elena's heart skipped. Humanity had been declared extinct by the Galactic Council 50 years ago, after their home system had been consumed by a stellar collapse. The few thousand survivors were scattered across the galaxy, many hiding their identity to avoid persecution or slavery. "We're still here," she said quietly. "Some of us, anyway." Indeed. The war beast moved closer, and Elena could see the ancient scars that crisscrossed its hide. "I am Thane, last guardian of the Zephyrian Empire. For 3 centuries I have protected this graveyard from looters and scavengers, yet I find myself curious about you, Captain Rodriguez." Marcus grabbed Elena's arm. "Captain, we should go, now. That thing could swallow us whole." But Elena was studying the creature's eyes. There was intelligence there, yes, but also something else. Loneliness, pain, the weight of centuries of solitude. "Why haven't you destroyed us already?" she asked. Thane's massive head tilted again. "A fair question. Perhaps it is because your species showed my creators kindness when others showed only fear, or perhaps it is because I am tired of being alone among the dead. You've been here by yourself for 300 years. I am the last of my kind, as you are among the last of yours. When my creators died, I remained. It was my purpose, my duty." The great creature's voice carried a weight of sorrow that made Elena's chest tight. But duty without purpose becomes mere existence. Elena made a decision that would have seemed insane to anyone else. Would you like some company? We could stay for a while. Share some stories. Her crew stared at her as if she'd lost her mind. Jin's mouth fell open. Marcus started to protest, but Zara put a hand on his arm, watching her captain with new understanding. Thane was silent for so long that Elena wondered if she'd offended him. Then quietly he said, "It has been centuries since anyone offered me companionship rather than challenge. You're either very brave or very foolish, Captain Rodriguez." "Probably both," Elena admitted with a slight smile. "But that's what humans do. We make friends in impossible places." A sound rumbled through the communication system that might have been laughter. "Yes, I remember that about your kind." "Very well, Captain. You may approach, but slowly. I am out of practice with guests." As Zara carefully piloted the Persistence closer to the ancient war beast, Elena wondered what she was getting them into. But she'd spent her whole life taking risks, and something told her this was a risk worth taking. In the vast loneliness of space, perhaps the most human thing she could do was reach out to another lonely soul, no matter how different they might be. The galaxy thought both their species were extinct. Maybe it was time to prove the galaxy wrong. The docking process was unlike anything Elena had ever experienced. Thane had no traditional docking bay. Instead, he carefully grasped the Persistence with tendrils that emerged from his chest, organic appendages strong enough to hold a ship but gentle enough not to crush it. The sensation of being held by a living creature was both terrifying and oddly comforting. "Hull integrity holding," Marcus reported, though his voice shook slightly. "I'm reading elevated temperature where those tendrils are touching us, but nothing dangerous." He's warming the connection points, Elena realized, making sure we're comfortable. Through the viewports, they could see Thane's massive head turn toward them, those burning orange eyes watching their every movement. When Elena looked directly at him, she could swear she saw him nod slightly in acknowledgement. "Captain," Zara said quietly, "I'm showing an atmosphere reading around us. He's generating a breathable environment." Elena felt a shiver of amazement. The war beast wasn't just intelligent, he was considerate. She activated the external speakers. "Thank you, Thane. That's very thoughtful." "Your ship is small and fragile," came the rumbling reply. "I would not wish you to be uncomfortable during our conversation." Jin had been monitoring their surroundings and suddenly looked up with wide eyes. "Captain, I'm reading multiple signals out there. There are other ships in this graveyard. Lots of them. But they're all powered down, completely dead. Scavengers," Thane explained, his voice carrying a note of disgust. "Over the centuries, many have come seeking Zephyrian technology. I have discouraged them." Elena could imagine what that discouragement looked like. The graveyard around them wasn't just Zephyrian ships, it was everyone who had tried to loot them. "Why are we different?" she asked. "Because you identified yourself honestly. Because you asked permission rather than simply taking, and because—" Thane paused, and Elena sensed he was choosing his words carefully. "Because your species understands loss." The weight in his voice made Elena's heart ache. She made another impulsive decision. "Would you like to come aboard?" "We could talk face to face." Her crew looked at her in alarm. Marcus started to speak, but Elena held up a hand. "I know it sounds crazy, but something tells me we can trust him." "Captain," Thane's voice was touched with what sounded like surprise. "I appreciate the offer, but I am somewhat larger than your vessel." Elena smiled. "I was thinking more of you visiting us in a smaller form." "Can you do that?" Silence stretched for long moments. Then, "You know of the old ways. Few remember that we were shape-changers. My grandmother told me stories. She said the Zephyrians created their war beasts to be adaptable. Your grandmother was wise. Yes, I can take a smaller form, though I have not done so in many years. If you're certain, I'm certain." Elena watched through the viewport as Thane's massive form began to shimmer and blur. The process was beautiful and otherworldly, like watching starlight condensed into living matter. The enormous creature folded in on itself, compacting down until a much smaller figure stood on the hull of the Persistence, still clearly not human, but roughly their size. In his smaller form, Thane stood about 7 feet tall, with the basic shape of a humanoid, but retaining his distinctive features. His hide was still that deep blue-black, but now marked with intricate silver patterns that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. His face was somewhere between canine and human, with intelligent amber eyes and a bearing that spoke of ancient dignity. When he moved, it was with the fluid grace of a predator, but also with careful restraint. Atmospheric controls are adjusting, Marcus reported. We're reading him as compatible with our environment. Elena moved to the airlock personally, ignoring the nervous looks from her crew. When the doors opened, Thane stood there, his head slightly bowed in what she recognized as a gesture of respect. "Thank you for trusting me," he said, his voice now deeper and more resonant in person. "It has been a very long time since I have been welcome anywhere." "Welcome aboard the Persistence," Elena said formally, then extended her hand. "I'm Elena Rodriguez." Thane looked at her outstretched hand for a moment, then carefully took it in his own. His skin was warm and slightly textured, like leather worn smooth by time. His grip was firm but controlled, as if he was very aware of his own strength. "Thane, last guardian of the Zephyrian Empire," he replied. "Though I confess it feels strange to use that title when speaking to friends." "Friends?" Elena felt a warmth spread through her chest at the word. "Just Thane is fine. Come on, let me show you around." As they walked through the ship's corridors, Thane moved with careful precision, clearly making an effort not to accidentally damage anything. Elena noticed how he observed everything with intense curiosity, occasionally asking questions about their technology or methods. "Your ship is efficient," he observed as they entered the common area. "Built for endurance rather than speed or comfort. A survivor's vessel." "That's exactly what it is," Elena agreed. "We've been out here for 5 years, just the 4 of us. It's not much, but it's home." Thane settled carefully into one of the larger chairs, which creaked but held his weight. 5 years of exile. "That is difficult." "Not exile exactly. We chose this life. After Earth was destroyed, some humans integrated into other societies, some built new colonies. We decided to stay free." Elena sat across from him. "What about you? You said your creators died?" Thane's expression grew distant. "The void spawn came. You may not remember them. They existed between the spaces of reality, consuming life and light wherever they found it. The Zephyrians created us to fight them, and we did, for centuries. But in the end," he shrugged, a very human gesture that looked strange on his alien frame. "The void spawn were defeated, but at great cost. My creators burned out their own life force to power the final weapon. They died knowing they had saved the galaxy, and you were left behind. By choice. Someone needed to guard their memory, their achievements. Someone needed to make sure their sacrifice meant something." Thane looked at his hands, which Elena noticed were trembling slightly. "But as the years passed and the galaxy forgot them, I began to wonder if I was guarding nothing but ghosts." Elena felt a sudden, fierce protectiveness toward this ancient being. Their sacrifice did mean something. The galaxy exists because of what they did. Does it? Thane looked up at her, and she was startled to see tears in his amber eyes. "The galaxy has moved on. New wars, new empires, new suffering. Sometimes I wonder if we only delayed the inevitable." Elena leaned forward. "That's not true. Every day that people live, love, create, explore, that's because of what they did. Just because the galaxy doesn't remember doesn't mean it doesn't matter." Thane stared at her for a long moment. Then quietly, "You speak like your grandmother. She said similar things during the war." Elena's breath caught. "You knew my grandmother?" "Commander Sarah Chen. She led the human fleet that stood with us at the Battle of the Crimson Nebula. I fought beside her ship." Thane's expression softened. "She was fearless and kind. She once shared her food with wounded Zephyrian soldiers, even though her own crew was starving." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. Her grandmother had died when Elena was 12, but she had always spoke proudly of her military service. She had never mentioned fighting alongside war beasts. "She never told me she knew someone like you." The war was classified for many years, and perhaps she thought no one would believe her. Thane smiled, an expression that transformed his entire face. "But you have her eyes, and her courage." As they talked through the ship's night cycle, Elena realized that this meeting was no coincidence. Somehow the universe had brought together 2 lonely souls who needed each other more than either of them had realized. 3 days passed before Elena realized how naturally Thane had integrated into their small crew. She found him in the engine room with Marcus, carefully examining the ship's power core with those impossibly keen eyes. "The harmonics are off by 0.03%, Thane was saying, his large hands moving with surprising delicacy as he adjusted something. "It's creating microfractures in the housing." Marcus watched in fascination as Thane's fingers seemed to meld briefly with the machinery. making adjustments that would have taken Marcus hours with proper tools. How did you even detect that? Our sensors didn't pick up anything. I am designed to interface with technology, Thane explained. My creators needed warriors who could repair themselves and their equipment in the field. He paused, looking at Marcus with something like embarrassment. I hope you don't mind my interference. I am unaccustomed to asking permission for such things. Mind? You just increased our engine efficiency by 12%. Marcus grinned. Feel free to interfere anytime you want. Elena smiled as she watched the interaction. Over the past few days, she'd seen each of her crew members overcome their initial fear of Thane in their own way. Jin had been won over when Thane helped him calibrate the sensor array, showing him techniques that improved their scanning range dramatically. Zara had warmed up to him after he'd shared stories of ancient flight patterns used by Zephyrian pilots, maneuvers that she was eager to try. But it was during the quiet moments that Elena really got to know Thane. Late at night, when the others were sleeping, they would sit in the observation lounge and talk. He told her about the Zephyrian Empire at its height, about worlds covered in crystal cities and space stations that sang with harmonic energy. She told him about Earth before the collapse, about blue skies and green forests and the way rain smelled on summer evenings. I have a confession, Thane said on the fourth evening as they watched the stars through the lounge's large viewport. I have been monitoring galactic communications while you sleep. Elena turned to him with interest rather than alarm.
What have you found?
Disturbing news. The hegemony has declared this sector under military quarantine. They are sending a battle fleet to cleanse the Zephyrian ruins. Thane's voice carried notes of anger. They believe there are dangerous artifacts here that could threaten galactic stability. Elena felt a chill. The hegemony was the galaxy's current dominant power, a militaristic alliance of species that brooked no challenges to their authority. They were also the ones who had officially declared humanity extinct and forbidden any efforts to search for survivors. How long do we have? Their fleet will arrive in 6 days. Thane looked at her seriously. Captain, you and your crew should leave immediately. I will not have more humans die because of me. What about you? Thane was quiet for a long moment. I will do what I was made to do. I will fight. Against an entire battle fleet? Thane, that's suicide. Perhaps. But I cannot allow them to desecrate this place. Too many good people died here. His amber eyes met hers. Your grandmother among them. Elena's breath caught. What do you mean? The Battle of the Crimson Nebula was the last battle of the war. Commander Chen's ship was destroyed, covering the retreat of the civilian transports. She died a hero's death, saving thousands of lives. Thane's voice was gentle but firm. This graveyard is her tomb as much as it is my creator's. I will not abandon it. Elena stood abruptly, pacing to the viewport. Outside, the twisted remains of ancient ships drifted silently, each one a monument to sacrifice and loss. Somewhere out there were the remnants of her grandmother's ship. There has to be another way, she said finally. Captain? Thane's voice was kind but resigned. I am one warrior against a fleet. I am powerful, yes, but I am not invincible. The hegemony has weapons specifically designed to kill my kind. Elena turned back to him, her mind racing. What if you weren't alone? I cannot ask you to stay. You have already given me more than I could have hoped for. Friendship, companionship, the knowledge that I am not forgotten. Do not throw away your lives for... That's not your decision to make, Elena interrupted. It's ours. Before Thane could respond, the ship's intercom crackled to life. Captain, to the bridge, Jin's voice was tight with urgency. We've got incoming signals. Elena and Thane hurried to the bridge where Jin was hunched over his console, his face pale with concentration. What is it? Elena asked. I'm picking up distress signals from multiple sources. 3 ships, maybe 4, scattered throughout the graveyard. They're all transmitting on old human emergency frequencies. Elena felt her heart skip. Human ships? That's what it looks like. But Captain... Jin looked up at her with wide eyes. These signals are coming from ships that have been dark for decades. They just started transmitting 20 minutes ago. Thane moved to the sensor station, his eyes beginning to glow as he interfaced directly with the equipment. After a moment, he looked up with an expression of amazement. They are awakening, he said quietly. What's awakening? The Guardian protocols. When my creators built this place, they installed automated systems designed to activate in case of invasion. But they were programmed to respond only to Zephyrian biosignatures. Thane looked at Elena with something like awe. Your presence here has changed something. The systems are recognizing you as allied forces. Meaning what exactly? Meaning? Thane's voice carried a note of hope for the first time since she'd known him. That you may have just awakened every piece of Zephyrian military technology in this graveyard. Zara looked up from her pilot's console. Captain, I'm reading massive energy spikes throughout the sector. Dead ships are coming online everywhere. Elena felt a thrill of excitement mixed with terror. How many ships are we talking about? Jin consulted his readings. Preliminary scans show at least 50 vessels of various sizes, all powering up simultaneously. Some of them are the size of space stations. Elena looked at Thane, who was staring at the sensor readings with an expression of disbelief. Is this normal? Nothing about this is normal, he admitted. The Guardian protocols were never supposed to activate without direct Zephyrian command authorization. But somehow your biosignature is triggering them. He paused, studying her with new intensity. Captain, I think your connection to this place runs deeper than either of us realized. What do you mean? Your grandmother didn't just fight beside us. She was formally inducted into the Zephyrian fleet as an honorary commander. Her genetic signature would have been recorded in the military database. Thane's voice grew excited. You're not just her granddaughter, genetically you're her direct heir. The systems are recognizing you as a legitimate Zephyrian fleet commander. Elena stared at him. That's impossible, is it? Marcus had been listening from his engineering station. Captain, think about it. You've always had an instinct for alien technology. You can pilot ships you've never seen before, interface with systems that should be completely foreign to you. Elena felt the pieces clicking together in her mind. The strange dreams she'd had as a child. Dreams of crystal cities and singing ships. The way she'd always been drawn to ancient technology. The reason she'd felt compelled to approach Thane instead of running. So what does this mean? She asked. Thane stood, his posture straightening into something more military. It means, Commander Rodriguez, that you now have a fleet at your disposal. The question is, what do you intend to do with it? Elena looked around at her crew. Jin staring at the sensor readings in amazement. Marcus grinning with excitement. Zara looking ready for whatever challenge came next. Then she looked at Thane, this ancient warrior who had spent 3 centuries alone, guarding the memory of heroes. I intend to show the hegemony that they picked the wrong graveyard to mess with, she said firmly, and that both humans and Zephyrians are very much alive. For the first time since she'd met him, Thane smiled with genuine joy. Then let us prepare for war, Commander. We have 6 days to turn a graveyard into a fortress. The next 48 hours transformed the graveyard from a silent monument into a buzzing hive of activity. Elena stood on the bridge of the newly awakened Zephyrian command ship Eternal Vigil, watching through the massive viewports as ancient vessels throughout the sector came online one by one. Systems integration at 67%, reported the ship's AI, its voice a harmonious blend of tones that seemed to resonate through Elena's bones. Weapons platforms are cycling through diagnostic routines. Estimated time to full combat readiness, 4 days, 7 hours. Elena still couldn't quite believe it was real. The Eternal Vigil was a floating city, nearly 5 kilometers long and bristling with weapons technology that was centuries ahead of anything the current galaxy possessed. When she'd first stepped aboard, guided by Thane, the ship had recognized her instantly. Welcome home, Commander Rodriguez. The AI had said in perfect English, I have been waiting for you. Now she stood in the command center, learning to interface with systems that responded to her thoughts as much as her words. The sensation was overwhelming. She could feel the pulse of the ship's massive engines, sense the status of every weapon and defensive system, even perceive the locations of the other vessels in their growing fleet. Commander, Thane approached, his expression serious. We need to discuss strategy. I've completed my analysis of the incoming hegemony force. Elena turned to him, noting that he had also changed over the past 2 days. Being back among Zephyrian technology had reawakened something in him. He moved with more confidence, spoke with the authority of someone born to command. The loneliness was still there, but it was overshadowed now by purpose. Show me what we're facing. Thane gestured, and a 3-dimensional tactical display appeared in the air between them. Elena could see the hegemony fleet represented as red dots approaching their position, and there were far more of them than she'd expected. 73 ships, Thane said grimly. including 12 dreadnoughts and a planetary bombardment vessel. This isn't just a cleansing force, it's an extermination fleet. Elena studied the display, her heart sinking. How many ships do we have operational? 41 combat-capable vessels, with more coming online every hour. But, Commander, Thane paused, his expression troubled. There's something else. I've been monitoring hegemony communications, and they're not just coming to destroy the graveyard. They know about you. What do you mean? They know there are humans here, and they're specifically coming to eliminate any survivors. Thane's amber eyes met hers. The hegemony never declared humanity extinct because they believed it was true. They declared it extinct because they wanted it to be true. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. They're the ones who destroyed our home system. I believe so, and now they know they failed to kill all of you. Thane's voice carried barely controlled rage. They cannot allow the galaxy to learn that they committed genocide against a peaceful species. Elena turned back to the tactical display, her mind racing. This wasn't just about protecting the graveyard anymore, it was about survival. If the hegemony fleet succeeded here, they would hunt down every remaining human in the galaxy. Commander Rodriguez to all vessels, she said, activating the fleet communications array. Her voice was carried to every awakened ship in the graveyard. This is your fleet commander speaking. In 4 days, we will face an enemy that seeks not just to destroy this sacred place, but to complete the genocide of the human species. I won't lie to you, the odds are against us. But we have something they don't expect: the combined strength of humanity and the Zephyrian Empire. Throughout the fleet, ancient AIs responded with acknowledgement signals. Elena could feel their readiness, their eagerness to finally fight again after centuries of sleep. Jin, report on the human survivors we've detected, Elena called to her communications officer, who was now working from a station that interfaced directly with the ship's sensors. We've made contact with 14 human ships scattered throughout the graveyard, Jin reported. Most are small salvage vessels like ours, but there are a couple of larger transports. Total human personnel, 307 people. Elena closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of responsibility. 300 humans, possibly among the last of their species, were now under her protection. Zara, status on the planetary defense grid? Coming online now, Commander. Zara's voice came from the pilot station, where she was learning to coordinate the movements of dozens of ships simultaneously. The Zephyrians built some serious defensive installations here. Asteroid fortresses, minefields, even some kind of spatial distortion generators. The distortion generators are particularly nasty, Thane added with satisfaction. They can create localized tears in space-time, making it impossible for enemy ships to maintain formation or accurate targeting. Elena nodded, feeling a spark of hope. What about the other war beasts? Are there others like you? Thane's expression grew sad. I am the last of my kind, Commander. But, he gestured to another section of the tactical display. The Zephyrians created other defensive systems. Automated hunter-killers, quantum torpedo platforms, even some experimental technology that I'm not entirely certain how to operate. Such as something called the Harmony Engine. According to the records, it's capable of creating sympathetic resonance between multiple vessels, allowing them to act as a single unified entity. Thane looked puzzled. The theory suggests it could allow a smaller fleet to coordinate so perfectly that they could outmaneuver and outfight a much larger force. Elena felt something click in her mind, a strange sense of familiarity. Show me the controls for this Harmony Engine. Thane led her to a section of the command center she hadn't noticed before, where a complex, crystalline console pulsed with soft light. The moment Elena placed her hands on it, the crystals responded, lighting up with patterns that seemed to flow through her fingers. Remarkable, Thane breathed. The system is accepting your neural patterns immediately. It usually takes months to attune someone to a Harmony Engine. Elena could feel something vast awakening at her touch. Not just the engine itself, but the network it connected to. She could sense every ship in their fleet, feel their individual capabilities and limitations. More than that, she could feel the crews aboard the human vessels, their fear and determination mixing together. Commander, Marcus's voice came over the intercom from the engineering deck. I'm reading some kind of massive energy buildup throughout the fleet. The human ships are being affected too. Their systems are integrating with the Zephyrian technology somehow. Elena understood what was happening even as Marcus described it. The Harmony engine wasn't just connecting the ships, it was connecting the people. She could feel Jin's analytical mind processing sensor data from a dozen different sources. She could sense Zara's piloting instincts being enhanced by access to Zephyrian flight computers. Marcus was interfacing with engineering systems across the entire fleet, optimizing power distribution and weapon configurations. Thane, she said quietly, I think I understand what my grandmother really was to your people. What do you mean? She wasn't just an honorary commander. She was the first human to successfully interface with the Harmony engine, wasn't she? The first to truly bridge the gap between human intuition and Zephyrian technology. Thane stared at her for a long moment, then slowly nodded. Yes, she was our first hybrid commander. Human creativity and determination combined with our technological capabilities. It was what allowed us to finally defeat the Void Spawn. Elena felt the full weight of her inheritance settling on her shoulders. She wasn't just fighting to protect a graveyard or even to save the remaining humans. She was carrying on her grandmother's legacy, completing a bond between two species that had been forged in war and tempered by sacrifice. Attention all vessels, she said, her voice now carrying the harmonic resonance of the Zephyrian communication system. We have 3 days to prepare. When the hegemony arrives, they're going to discover that the galaxy's greatest mistake wasn't declaring humans extinct. It was giving us time to make friends with beings who never forget a debt. Throughout the fleet, both human and Zephyrian voices responded with a battle cry that shook the stars. Elena smiled, feeling her grandmother's presence like a warm hand on her shoulder. The hegemony had no idea what they were flying into. Let's show them what happens when you threaten the family, she said to Thane, who responded with a predator's grin that promised the coming battle would be one for the history books. The hegemony fleet dropped out of hyperspace with the precision of a military operation, centuries in the making. Elena watched their arrival on the main tactical display, feeling the collective tension of her fleet through the Harmony engine. 73 warships arranged themselves in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with the cold efficiency of modern military design. They're beautiful, Zara murmured from her station. And terrifying, Elena had to agree. The hegemony dreadnoughts were massive vessels, each one bristling with enough firepower to glass a planet. At the center of their formation sat something even more intimidating. The hegemony flagship Inevitable Justice, a mobile command station the size of a small moon. Incoming transmission, Jin reported. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. Put it through. The main screen flickered, revealing a figure that made Elena's blood run cold. Admiral Keth Veros was a hegemony legend, a tall, gaunt being with pale blue skin and eyes like chips of ice. He had commanded the fleets that brought dozens of species under hegemony control, and his reputation for ruthless efficiency was known throughout the galaxy. Unknown vessels, Veros began, his voice carrying the authority of absolute certainty. You are trespassing in a quarantine zone. This area contains dangerous alien technology that poses a threat to galactic stability. Withdraw immediately or face destruction. Elena activated the response channel, her voice carried by the harmonic resonators of the Zephyrian fleet. Admiral Varos, this is Commander Elena Rodriguez of the Free Human Fleet. These are not unknown vessels. They are the rightful guardians of this memorial. We will not withdraw. Varos's expression shifted from stern authority to shock, then to something darker. Human, you should not exist. Yet here we are. Elena's voice remained steady despite the fury building in her chest. The question is, what are you going to do about it? What I should have done 50 years ago. Varos leaned forward, his pale eyes glittering with malice. Complete the cleansing of your species. You are a historical aberration that will be corrected. The transmission cut off, and Elena felt the collective rage of her fleet through the Harmony engine. The human crews were furious at Varos's casual admission of genocide, while the Zephyrian AIs processed the threat with cold analytical precision. Commander, Thane said quietly, they're powering weapons. All ships? Elena watched as the hegemony formation began to spread out, moving to surround the graveyard. Through the Harmony engine, she could feel the tactical analysis being performed by dozens of different systems simultaneously. The hegemony had superior numbers and firepower, but they were moving predictably, following standard fleet engagement protocols. They don't know what they're facing, Elena realized. To them, we're just some ancient ships that somehow got powered up. Should we enlighten them? Thane asked, his amber eyes beginning to glow with battle readiness. Elena smiled grimly. Let's. She placed her hands on the Harmony engine controls, feeling the network expand around her consciousness. Through the connection, she could perceive the battle space as a three-dimensional web of possibilities. Every ship, every weapon, every potential maneuver existed as data flowing through her mind. All ships, initiate dispersal pattern Omega, she commanded. What happened next would have been impossible for any conventional fleet. In perfect unison, 41 Zephyrian vessels simply vanished from the hegemony sensors. They didn't jump to hyperspace or activate cloaking devices. They shifted into dimensional pockets that existed parallel to normal space, a technology the Zephyrians had perfected during their war with the Void Spawn. What in the void? Admiral Varos's voice crackled over the open communication channel before cutting off abruptly. Elena could see the hegemony fleet's confusion through her sensors. Their targeting systems were registering empty space where moments before there had been dozens of warships. Some of their vessels began firing randomly, hoping to hit targets they couldn't see. Phase 2, Elena said calmly. The Zephyrian ships reappeared, but not where they had been. The Harmony engine had allowed them to coordinate their emergence perfectly, materializing inside the hegemony formation in positions that gave them optimal firing angles. What followed was a display of tactical precision that belonged in military academies. Quantum torpedoes lanced out from the Zephyrian vessels, their sophisticated targeting systems guided by the combined tactical awareness of the entire fleet. Each shot was perfectly placed, striking at weapon emplacements, shield generators, and engine systems. The hegemony ships, caught completely off guard, took devastating damage before they could even begin to respond. But Elena knew better than to expect easy victory. The hegemony hadn't conquered half the galaxy through weakness. Shields up, Thane called out as return fire began to pour in. The hegemony response, when it came, was overwhelming. 73 ships opened fire simultaneously, their weapons coordinated by advanced battle computers. Even with their superior technology, the Zephyrian vessels were vastly outnumbered. Elena felt the pain of each hit through the Harmony engine. The destroyer's silent blade took a direct hit from a plasma cannon and went dark. The cruiser Memory of Stars lost its primary weapon systems. Worst of all, 3 of the human vessels, salvage ships that had been integrated into the fleet, were caught in a crossfire and destroyed outright. Commander, Jin's voice was tight with emotion. We just lost the Determination and 93 people aboard her. Elena felt the deaths like physical blows, the Harmony engine carrying the final moments of the human cruise before the connection was severed. But through the pain, she also felt something else, the growing anger of her fleet. The Zephyrian AIs weren't just processing tactical data anymore. They were experiencing something that their creators had built into them, but which had lain dormant for centuries: righteous fury. The human emotion was bleeding through the Harmony engine, awakening protective protocols that turned the ancient warships into something more than mere vessels. Phase 3, Elena said, her voice now carrying harmonics that made the air itself vibrate with power. This time, the Zephyrian ships didn't just coordinate their attack, they became extensions of Elena's will. Through the Harmony engine, she was piloting every vessel simultaneously, her consciousness distributed across 40 different hulls. The fleet moved like a single organism, flowing around hegemony formations and striking with surgical precision. The spatial distortion generators activated, creating pockets of twisted space-time that made accurate targeting impossible for the hegemony forces. Hunter-killer drones swarmed from hidden launch bays, each one guided by the collective intelligence of the fleet. And through it all, Elena felt her grandmother's presence growing stronger, as if the legendary commander was lending her strength across the years. "Admiral," came a panicked voice over the hegemony communications. "We're reading massive power spikes from their larger vessels. Energy levels are off the charts." Elena knew what was coming. The Zephyrian dreadnoughts had been holding back, analyzing the enemy while their smaller cousins engaged. Now they were ready to show the hegemony what truly advanced technology could accomplish. "Thane," she said quietly, "it's time to show them why your people were called the Guardians of the Galaxy." Thane's smile was terrible and beautiful at the same time. Around them, the bridge of the Eternal Vigil began to thrum with power as ancient weapon systems that hadn't fired in 3 centuries prepared to remind the galaxy why some things should never be forgotten. The first phase of the battle was over. The hegemony had expected to face some old ships with antiquated technology. Instead, they were fighting the combined will of 2 species who had never learned how to surrender. "All ships," Elena commanded, feeling the battle joy of her fleet flowing through her veins. "Show them what happens when you threaten the last free humans in the galaxy." The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath as the real battle began. The real battle began with a sound that no one expected: singing. It started as a low harmonic resonance from the Zephyrian dreadnoughts, their crystalline cores vibrating in perfect synchronization. The song spread through the fleet, each vessel adding its voice until the entire graveyard rang with a chorus that had not been heard for 3 centuries. Through the harmony engine, Elena felt the music in her bones, her blood, her very soul. "The war song," Thane whispered, his amber eyes wide with wonder. "I had forgotten. We always sang before the great battles." The hegemony fleet responded with a barrage that would have reduced planets to rubble. Plasma cannons, quantum disruptors, and antimatter torpedoes filled the space between the fleets with deadly light. But the singing continued, and Elena understood why. The music wasn't just ceremonial. It was functional. Through the harmony engine, she felt each note as it synchronized the fleet's defensive systems. The war song was a mathematical formula expressed as music, allowing dozens of ships to coordinate their shields into overlapping patterns that distributed damage across the entire formation. What should have been devastating hits became manageable impacts shared among multiple vessels. "Impossible." Admiral Varos's voice crackled over the communication channels. "Their defensive efficiency is beyond theoretical maximums." Elena smiled grimly as she felt the song's rhythm pulse through her consciousness. "Jin, open a channel to the Hegemony flagship." "Channel open, Commander." "Admiral Varos." Elena's voice carried the harmonic power of the entire fleet. "You're not fighting technology. You're fighting harmony itself. You're fighting the bonds between people who refuse to let each other die alone." "Sentimental nonsense," Varos snarled back. "All ships target their command vessel. Maximum firepower." Elena felt the targeting locks focus on the eternal vigil like the attention of a dozen predators. Through the tactical display, she could see energy building in the hegemony weapons. Enough concentrated firepower to crack a moon. "Thane," she said quietly, "I think it's time you showed them what you really are." Thane's human-like form began to shimmer, but this time the change was different. Instead of simply growing larger, he seemed to become more real, more present, as if he had been holding back vast portions of himself for Elena's comfort. The bridge around them trembled as his true nature asserted itself. "All crew to emergency stations," Elena announced shipwide. "Our guardian is about to remind the galaxy why war beasts were feared across 1,000 worlds." The transformation was magnificent and terrifying. Thane's form expanded through dimensions that shouldn't have existed, becoming something that was simultaneously present on the bridge and manifesting in space around the ship. Elena could see him on the external monitors, a creature of living starlight and shadow, 6 kilometers long and crackling with energies that made stars look dim. When he spoke, his voice came from everywhere at once. "I am Thane, last guardian of the Zephyrian Empire. I am the memory of the fallen and the promise of justice. You have declared war on the innocent. I declare war on you." The hegemony fleet's coordinated strike lanced out, enough energy to sterilize a solar system. It struck Thane's war form and simply stopped. The ancient war beast absorbed the entire barrage, his crystalline hide glowing brighter with each impact. "Thank you," Thane said politely. "I was running low on energy." What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations, assuming anyone survived to build academies. Thane exhaled, and stellar fire poured from his jaws in a concentrated beam that passed through 3 hegemony dreadnoughts like they were made of paper. His claws swept through space, creating spatial tears that swallowed enemy vessels whole. When he howled, the sound traveled through hyperspace itself, disrupting hegemony communications across half the galaxy. But Elena knew that even Thane's power had limits. Through the harmony engine, she could feel the strain the transformation was putting on him. Worse, the hegemony was adapting. Their fleet commanders were pulling back, trying to coordinate a response to a threat they had never imagined possible. "Commander," Jin called out, his voice tight with worry, I'm reading massive energy spikes from the hegemony flagship. They're charging something big. Elena focused her awareness through the sensor network and felt her blood turn to ice. The inevitable justice was powering up a weapon she recognized from the classified files her grandmother had left her. A stellar disruptor, capable of turning a star into a supernova. They're going to destroy the entire system, she breathed. Commander? Marcus's voice was steady despite the terror in it. Elena felt the weight of decision pressing down on her. If the hegemony activated that weapon, it wouldn't just destroy the graveyard. It would kill every human in the system and turn the local star into an expanding wave of destruction that would sterilize dozens of neighboring systems. Through the Harmony engine, she felt the awareness of her fleet. They understood the situation as clearly as she did. And she felt their response, not fear but determination. They were ready to do whatever was necessary. All ships, Elena announced, her voice carrying to every vessel in both fleets. This is Commander Rodriguez. The hegemony is preparing to commit genocide on a stellar scale. We cannot allow this weapon to fire. She felt Thane's massive presence turning toward her, his war form still engaged with the hegemony's outer formations. Elena, what are you planning? Something my grandmother would have done. Elena's hands moved over the Harmony engine controls, accessing systems she had only read about in the archived files. Something that requires the willing sacrifice of brave people. The war song changed, becoming something deeper and more solemn. Through the fleet, Elena felt understanding spreading. The Zephyrian AIs were calculating possibilities, while the human crews were making peace with what was to come. The Harmony engine can do more than coordinate our ships, Elena explained, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was proposing. It can merge them, temporarily combine their mass, their energy, their consciousness into a single entity. The ancient texts call it the Unity Protocol. Elena, no. Thane's voice carried across all dimensions. The Unity Protocol was theoretical even for my creators. The energy requirements alone could be met by a stellar disruptor if we time it right, Elena finished. We turn their own weapon against them. Through the Harmony engine, she felt the fleet's response. No arguments, no protests. Just acceptance and determination. These were people who had already lost everything once. They were not afraid to risk it all again to protect what remained. All human vessels, Elena announced. This is a volunteer mission. Anyone who wants to evacuate to minimum safe distance, do it now. The response was silence. Then, one by one, voices began to respond over the communication net. Persistence standing by. Commander, Wanderer's Hope ready for Unity. Last chance ain't going anywhere. Elena felt tears streaming down her face as every single human ship confirmed their participation. They understood that the Unity Protocol might save the galaxy, but it would almost certainly destroy everyone involved in it. Thane, she called to her guardian, can you hold them off for 2 more minutes? The ancient war beast's laughter was like the birth of stars. Commander, I am just getting started. As Thane engaged the entire hegemony fleet in single combat, Elena began the most complex operation in recorded history, the voluntary merger of free minds into something greater than the sum of its parts. Through the Harmony engine, she felt her consciousness beginning to expand, touching each member of her fleet as they prepared to become something the galaxy had never seen before. The stars themselves seemed to pause, waiting to see if hope or hatred would triumph in the space between worlds. The Unity Protocol began with Elena's heartbeat. Through the Harmony engine, her pulse became the rhythm that synchronized 300 human minds and 41 Zephyrian artificial intelligences. Elena felt her consciousness expanding beyond anything she had imagined possible, touching each member of her fleet as they willingly surrendered their individual existence to become part of something greater. She was Jin, feeling the sensor data flow through his mind like a river of pure information. She was Zara, experiencing the thrill of piloting every ship simultaneously. She was Marcus, understanding the harmony between human intuition and Zephyrian engineering. And through it all, she felt the steady presence of the Zephyrian AIs, ancient minds that had waited centuries for this moment of perfect synthesis. Elena. Thane's voice came to her across dimensions as his war form continued to battle the hegemony fleet. I can feel you changing. The Unity is working, but I might not survive it, Elena finished, her voice now speaking through every communication array in the fleet simultaneously. I know. It's worth it. Through the combined sensors of her fleet, she watched the inevitable Justice complete its charging sequence. The stellar disruptor was almost ready to fire, a weapon that would turn their sun into a supernova and create an expanding sphere of destruction that would reach inhabited systems within hours. Admiral Varos, Elena's harmonized voice reached across space to the Hegemony flagship. Final warning. Stand down your weapon and withdraw or face the consequences. Varos's response came as a cold laugh. You're bluffing, human. Whatever trick you're performing, it cannot stand against the power of a star. You're right, Elena admitted. We can't stand against the power of a star, but we can redirect it. The Unity reached completion just as the stellar disruptor fired. What emerged from the graveyard was no longer a fleet of individual ships. It was a single entity, a fusion of human determination and Zephyrian technology that existed as both matter and energy, consciousness and calculation. Elena felt herself distributed across every molecule of the construct. Her awareness spanning distances that should have required light-speed communication, but somehow felt as immediate as her own thoughts. The stellar disruptor's beam, capable of triggering supernovas, struck the Unity directly. For a moment that lasted eternity, Elena experienced the power of stellar creation and destruction flowing through her being. The energy should have torn apart every atom in the fleet. Instead, the Unity absorbed it, channeled it, and transformed it into something else entirely. Impossible, Varos whispered over the communication channels. Elena's response came not as words, but as action. The Unity moved, not through space, but through the dimensions between spaces, appearing instantly beside the inevitable Justice. The massive Hegemony flagship, which had seemed so intimidating moments before, now looked like a toy beside the cosmic entity the fleet had become. Admiral Varos, Elena's voice carried the harmonic power of fused realities. You wanted to use the power of a star against us. Let me show you what we can do with that power instead. The Unity didn't attack the Hegemony fleet. Instead, it began to sing. The song was the same war song the Zephyrians had sung for centuries, but transformed by human emotion and amplified by stellar energy. It carried across space and through hyperspace, reaching every communication array in the galaxy. And embedded in that song was a message, the true history of humanity, the real story of the Zephyrian sacrifice, and the revelation of the Hegemony's genocide. Across 1,000 worlds, people stopped what they were doing to listen. They heard Elena's grandmother's voice describing the final battle against the Void Spawn. They witnessed the moment when human and Zephyrian forces had stood together to save the galaxy. They learned that the humans declared extinct were still alive, still fighting, still protecting others. Most importantly, they heard Admiral Varos's own words, recorded and broadcast. Complete the cleansing of your species. You wanted to erase us from history, Elena said, her consciousness still distributed through the Unity. Instead, you've just revealed your crimes to the entire galaxy. Through the communication networks, Elena could sense the response building. Planets that had submitted to Hegemony rule were rising in rebellion. Species that had been conquered were remembering their own desire for freedom. The song of unity was spreading, and with it, hope. Admiral Varos, perhaps realizing what was happening, ordered his remaining ships to fire everything they had at the Unity. Plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, and antimatter warheads poured toward the entity that had been Elena's fleet. The Unity absorbed every shot, converting the weapon's energy into more power for the song that was reshaping galactic civilization. This ends now, Elena declared. But instead of destroying the Hegemony fleet, the Unity began to separate. Individual ships emerged from the cosmic entity, but they were changed. The human vessels now incorporated Zephyrian technology seamlessly, while the Zephyrian ships carried human crews who understood them perfectly. The Unity had become permanent, not as a single entity but as an unbreakable bond between species. Elena found herself back on the bridge of the Eternal Vigil, but she wasn't alone. Through the Harmony engine, she could still feel every member of her fleet, human and Zephyrian alike. They were individuals again, but they were also forever connected. Thane, she called out. The ancient war beast materialized on the bridge in his human-like form, but now Elena could see the cosmic entity he truly was, overlaid on his smaller shape like a double exposure. I am here, Commander. We all are. Through the viewports, Elena could see the hegemony fleet withdrawing in confusion. With their crimes broadcast to the galaxy and their authority challenged on 1,000 worlds, they had more pressing concerns than a single graveyard. Admiral Varos is requesting parley, Jin reported, his voice carrying new harmonics from his integration with Zephyrian systems. Elena smiled. Tell him he can submit his formal surrender to the newly reformed Zephyrian Human Alliance. We'll be happy to discuss terms. As the defeated hegemony fleet retreated, Elena looked around at her transformed crew. Marcus was interfacing directly with engineering systems he couldn't have imagined before. Zara was piloting not just their ship, but coordinating movement patterns for the entire fleet. Jin was processing sensor data from sources scattered across the galaxy. What happens now? Zara asked. Elena felt the answer through the Harmony engine, shared among all the minds that had chosen unity over destruction. Throughout the galaxy, the oppressed were rising. Species that had forgotten their own history were remembering. And somewhere in the graveyard, ancient Zephyrian systems were awakening other guardians. Other protectors who had waited centuries for the call. Now we do what humans and Zephyrians do best, Elena said, feeling her grandmother's approval like warm sunlight. We protect the innocent, we stand up to bullies, and we make sure that no one has to face the darkness alone. Thane stepped beside her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. The galaxy thought we were both extinct, Commander. But extinction and evolution are sometimes the same thing. Elena nodded, looking out at the stars that no longer seemed cold and distant. Through the Harmony engine, she could feel other human ships throughout the galaxy, awakening to the call of unity. She could sense Zephyrian systems coming online in distant sectors, preparing to resume their ancient role as guardians. The age of hegemony tyranny was ending. The age of cooperation was beginning. All ships, Elena announced to her fleet, her voice now carrying the authority of someone who had touched the infinite and chosen to remain human. Set course for the outer sectors. We have a galaxy to liberate, and a future to build. As the combined fleet moved out from the graveyard that had become a symbol of hope rather than loss, Elena felt a profound sense of completion. Her grandmother's mission was finished. The debt between humanity and the Zephyrians was paid in full, but more than that, they had created something new, a partnership between species that would ensure neither would ever be alone again. The war beast and the human had found each other in the darkness, and together they had lit a flame that would burn across the stars for generations to come. Behind them, the graveyard continued its silent vigil, no longer a monument to the dead but a beacon for the living. And somewhere in the singing of the stellar winds through the ancient hulls, the spirits of the fallen smiled and whispered their approval. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, and for the first time in centuries it was also full of hope.